Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life podcast. I'm Mary Crean, and I'm one of the hosts, but I'm also joined today by Laura Dinan-Haber. Laura, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Mary. I'm excited about our conversation and all the wonderful things we're going to learn about.
Absolutely. And for an extra exciting piece of this, we have a guest co-host, and her name is Jackie Bayman, and she is the Chief People Officer at Nassau Financial Group. She's also someone very special to the guest that she's going to introduce, but I'm going to let her do that. So, Jackie, without further ado, introduce our guest.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning, everybody. I'm thrilled to introduce Mary Jane Foster. She is the president and CEO of Interval House, which is Connecticut's largest domestic violence agency, serving Hartford and 23 surrounding cities. And our special connection is that I've been on the board for 4 years, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to support Interval House, which is just doing incredibly impactful work. So Mary Jane, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Oh, gosh. Well, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for your service on the board. And thanks, Mary, for having me here today. I was a little kid in Denver, Colorado. I wanted to be an actress. And so I went to New York, $227 in my pocket, and worked for 22 years as an actress. And then I became a lawyer, and then I became a developer, and then I was in higher ed, and now I'm here in Hartford running Connecticut's largest domestic violence agency. So it's been a heck of a journey. It has always been fun. It has always been challenging. And honestly, I have no regrets, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Well, I absolutely love that. And one of the reasons I was excited to invite you on, Mary Jane, is because of your amazingly interesting career. You are bold. You are a force to be reckoned with. And I love that you've changed and reiterated yourself. And it's just been fabulous. So tell us a little bit about, because on Prime Life podcast, our high level is living longer, living better. So I'd love for you to share with our audience what continues to fuel you in your reinvention of yourself each time.
Well, I have never taken a job that I didn't want to, and I have never worked anywhere at anything that I didn't love. And I think when you do that, the old adage, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And that's true. I have learned, not saying I accept it, but I've learned that I'm much less risk averse than most people. It never occurred to me that, I might fail or starve to death as an actor. It occurred to me, of course, that I would fail, but not that I would starve to death or anything terrible would happen. It never occurred to me that I couldn't practice law or I couldn't run a baseball team. And I think a lot of it has to do with this thing I have where risk just doesn't impact me the way it does other people. And I really did not realize that until about 10 years ago. Because it's, for most people, they really weigh that very carefully. And it's not that I plowed into things without thought, but the failure is just not part of my lexicon. It doesn't keep me up at night. There are lots of things that keep me up at night, but that's not one. So I've always chosen things because I liked the idea of it. I liked the challenge of it. And they made me happy. And again, there was thing that I don't really care about failure. It's a relative term. So I hope that helps. But it gets me out of bed every morning. I mean, to be doing something you love and to have it be impactful. I think I make a difference in this little pond, in this little part of the world in which I live. And it gets me out of bed, as does my dog.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great. I have a dog that loves to get me up as well. So, one thing I find interesting, you talk about failure and how it's just not in the lexicon. And I, like you, understand that failure is a thing that people recognize and it could happen. But to me, it's almost a different definition of success, right? We don't have to do well to do. And I think doing is the most important thing. So, for somebody, you mentioned 10 years ago, you recognize that you have that. It's just failure doesn't nag you in the same way as others. What's a tip you could give somebody who may be listening right now and they say, Mary Jane sounds like she's doing absolutely amazing work and she's not afraid to fail, but I feel like I want to do amazing work, but I'm too afraid to fail. Do you have a tip or a trick somebody could consider in their journey?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Well, I will tell you that when I get anxious, and I do, I'm just like everybody else, or fearful in any way about a big decision or taking a risk or something, I think through very carefully what the worst thing is that could happen to me. And, it's not a terminal illness. I'm not going to be out on the street. Everybody's not going to hate me. I'm still going to have my kids. My dog loves me. So what's the worst thing that could happen to me? And I've always felt, and this motivated me to come to New York at the age of 20 with no money and knew nobody. I just thought, if I don't go, if I don't try this, I'll be 40 years old. Back then, I thought 40 was really old. I'll be 40 years old, just bitter because I never tried. And so I picked myself up and I went to New York. And the same thing with developing the ballpark and the baseball team. Nothing had happened, no development in Bridgeport for over 20 years. And everybody said, you can't do it here. Well, we did. And it just, you look at what's the worst thing that can happen to you. And really, if you take a deep breath, and I often do breathe a lot, I walk in the park with the dog a lot. And years ago, and you can look this guy up on LinkedIn, Jerry Posner, Posner, and he teaches gratitude. And I took a workshop with him, oh gosh, probably 25 years ago. He has Gratitude Tuesday. And on Tuesday, you spend the day, thanking your lucky stars and being grateful for everything. I liked it so much that I do it every morning when I walk the dog. I stop and think about how lucky I am, how blessed I am. And every day I find another reason to be grateful, or I'm reminded that I'm not nearly grateful enough for all that I have. You take that kind of stock, think about the worst thing that can happen to you, think about all the wonderful things you do have in your life, and you'll be able to take that risk.
How appropriate that we should be talking to you on Greta Tuesday, Mary Jane. So, I have always found your journey and your experiences with work fascinating, to have such a diverse career. I've been in human resources for 20 years, and I had a few careers before that, but overall you went from acting to owning a ballpark to, or before that, becoming an attorney, and now running a very successful and incredibly busy organization that supports victims of domestic violence. How, over the years, when you look back at this spectacular career, did you know when it was time for the next, or did something fall in your lap that moved from one truly diverse career to another in some ways? We'd love to hear that journey for you.
That's a really interesting question, and one that no one has ever asked me before. But in fact, I've always known when it was time to move on. I knew because of choices I made in my acting career, which was in some measure very, very successful. I was one of the top radio and television commercial actresses. I didn't win a Tony or a Grammy, and I never made my Oscar speech. But I knew that it was time to move on. And luckily for me, a friend of mine said, I want you to come help me raise money for this domestic violence agency. And I didn't know what it was. So I learned what it was. And because of the work there, I became a volunteer. And I was so frustrated I couldn't do more. I became a lawyer. But I realized then that being a lawyer couldn't solve all of the problems of survivors of domestic violence. It was about financial independence. It was about emotional independence and those things. So I began sitting on boards where I could influence the work that would impact women. And that led to the development of the ballpark and arena in Bridgeport. The Bridgeport Bluefish employed 90% were Bridgeport residents. And then when the arena opened, they had year-round part-time work. There were all kinds of wonderful success stories. And then I kind of felt it was time to go. B, there were, maybe you heard the mayor of Bridgeport went to jail. Things changed, and it was time for me to move on. And I was approached by the University of Bridgeport, and they said, we've turned around, we have a story, and you're the person we want to tell the story. And I was there for 8 years. I loved every minute of it. But then I knew it was time to go. I had done everything that I could do. And believe it or not, I just left. I dotted all my I's, crossed all my T's. No hard feelings, all good feelings. I just had to do something else. And that's when the job at Interval House just dropped out of the sky into my lap. And the blessing of it is that it has called on every skill and talent I have. It's by far the most complicated work I've ever done. And it is very, very gratifying. I'm not going to lie, creating 200 jobs in Bridgeport, Connecticut was incredibly amazing, but so is this. I love this work. I love being here. And I just am so thankful. I say to people, whether you believe in serendipity or karma or a higher power, I think God sent the Deus Ex down to pick me up, said, get that woman out of Bridgeport. Let's take her to Hartford. And that's what happened. Yeah. Here I am.
And Mary Jane, I remember when you came. And Mary Jane, I remember when you came to Hartford, and I was sharing that with Jackie. There was a party at the Malloys at the governor's residence. See, that's how long I remember you.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to you and hearing your background and being very intrigued by it and also being very impressed. But one of the things that most impresses me about you is how humble you are. In general, you really are. You're a humble woman. You've accomplished so much. Before we talk more about Interval House, as a former entrepreneur who's had her successes and her failures, I'm intrigued about two things. One, what did it take to go into a business that you really didn't know much about? Two, at the time, Were you one of or the only woman at the table?
Another great question. Yeah, that party at the Malloys was really, really lovely. And I met so many people that were so helpful to me. Two, it's very easy for me to be humble. I have much about which to be humble. That's that. I never knew a whole lot about any of the businesses I went into. I surely did not know anything about the development business. And it was a very steep learning curve, but I learned incredibly valuable lessons. And actually, I had the two best educational pieces in my life was one, I failed math. So they took me out of that track and put me in home economics. Anything you ever need to know in your whole life, you can learn in economics. And that's how I learned budgeting. It's how I learned so many skills. So it was budgeting. And then in show business, it's a business. It says show business for a reason. And if you would pay attention to the business, you are really in the marketing business. And I learned marketing, and everything else I've done is about marketing, whether it was at the Bluefish or it was at the University of Bridgeport or it's at Interval House. It's been about marketing. And when you take that core knowledge into it, you can learn what you need to learn, but you have a core skill on which you can rely. And I have always had that. In addition to that piece about I'm just not familiar with risk. I have been the only woman at the table a number of times. And initially it was incredibly uncomfortable. I just thought I was the dumbest person at the table. And when I didn't understand something or I didn't know anything, I didn't ask the question because I didn't want anyone to know that I was truly the dumbest person at the table. Until I'd been at a few tables and I heard men ask questions. And I thought, oh, I'm not the dumbest person at this table. And I learned to ask questions. And I became comfortable. And then, honestly, I became very intentional about being the only woman at the table. And making sure, and this is where 22 years of show business comes in handy, making sure I was perceived as serious and intelligent and worthy and secure and the go-to person at that table. I never walked into a meeting without thinking what I wanted to come out of it with and what was necessary to make that happen. And over time, I was not the only woman at the table. And that felt good. And one of the things I most love about Hartford is that there are so many women at the tables here. It's fascinating to me. The number of women at the table is so incredibly different than what I saw in Fairfield County. So that's been truly a joy.
So we're talking about tables and putting people around ourselves. And you talk about the journeys you've had in the businesses that you've been a part of and you've started and you've led, and not necessarily knowing a lot about those businesses when you began. However, it's having those core foundations and intelligence about many things that helped you lead there. Question I have for you is regarding tribes and people. A lot of the conversations we have on Prime Life podcasts circle back to those of which who are around oneself, those who do business with, or maybe their family who's helping, part of their journey. Question for you, and having known Mickey Herbert and former Bridgeport Bluefish
Sure.
fellow, how important is it to have the right people, great people, and maybe sometimes not the right people around you when making these decisions?
Another really terrific question. It's critical. Do you remember the Peter Drucker thing about culture eats strategy every time?
Yeah.
If you don't have the right people around you, if you have a culture that is in any way toxic, there is nothing you can do to make it work. Nothing. You can be the best leader in the world. You can be wholly financed. You can be brilliant at strategy and strategic in your vision. And if you have a toxic culture and you don't have the right people, it just can't get done. And I have been in those situations a couple of times in my life. And once I realized that I had to make wholesale changes, and it was painful. But out of a 21 person staff, 8 people left in an afternoon, and it was tough. It was very, very tough, but it was the only way I could change the culture, and it worked. It worked. Not 100% because that culture just seeps into the DNA, and it's very, very difficult to change. And what I have found, particularly, it's interesting in Hartford, because I came to Hartford and I knew some people, but I didn't know a lot of people. And I truly have found my tribe here. And most are incredibly interesting women who get up every day and do wonderful work, good work, fascinating work, hard work, and who love life and enjoy life. And I surround myself with those people, and we're incredibly supportive of each other. When I was first interviewing for the job in Hartford, one of my good friends is here in Hartford, and I called her and said, I've just interviewed for this job. I've got a call back. I think I'm going to get it, and I will have to move to Hartford. Would I like it? And she said, "Oh, you are going to love the women here. You are going to love it here. Get the job and move." And, a few weeks later, I did.
I love it. The importance of surrounding ourselves with those that can help support, challenge us, question us is, in so many ways a bit of a secret sauce, because many will surround themselves with the yes people because it's a little bit easier. Shifting gears a bit, Mary Jane, and just thinking again about your, incredibly diverse career. When you think back, what's been the most fulfilling? And this is a tough question because you've done so much, but what has been the most fulfilling accomplishment, experience that you've had? And in some ways, what's been the most fun? Because we all know, like, if work isn't fun, it's work.
Well, I loved acting and I had a lot of fun doing it. I made a lot of money, had a lot of fun. But it's not at the top of the list. In law, I didn't make a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of fun, and I wasn't that impactful. I knew I could do better. And I loved the University of Bridgeport, and I did a lot of good work there that I'm very proud of, moved the needle there. But in truth, the two best experiences, apart from my children, who are really the best work I've ever done, really the Bridgeport Bluefish and Interval House are tied. And for similar but a little bit different reasons. For one, everyone said it couldn't be done in Bridgeport. And to build a ballpark and to build a baseball team, and then to be one of only 2 women in the United States who co-own and run a baseball team was really a joy. The business is incredibly fun. It's a very interesting business. And I loved what it did for the community. I really, truly, truly loved it. And I'm proud. In 20 years, it was $40 million, most of which went back into the city of Bridgeport. So it was a great accomplishment done by a whole bunch of people, and I loved it. Interval House, I love for a different reason. I was talking about marketing, and in all of my years of volunteering, I'd heard about Jennifer Lopez and Iris Ruiz and Penny Mika and the great work that was done in Hartford. But when I was told about the opening at Interval House, I'd never heard of it. So I knew that the issue wasn't doing good work here. I knew the issue was a marketing issue. And what I didn't know until I got here is that it was on very, very shaky foundations. And for people who know me well, I'm not a process person. You probably could guess that. But I dug in, and for the first 2.5, 3 years I was here, I worked 6 and 7 days a week because the organization was a mess. And I have rebuilt it from the ground up, and I have stabilized it. We have more than tripled the operating reserve. We went from no endowment to a $2.1 million endowment. Our balance sheet has gone from 1.7 to 5 million we hit this month. And we're not in the credit line, and we pay our bills, and we have an employee handbook that's good and it's friendly. There are title equities, pay equities. I have done all that. And I feel so great about the future of this organization. But it's also that I love the staff here. I could not do what I do without this staff. And people go, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I couldn't. They are so good at what they do that I don't have to worry about them. I know they get up out of bed every morning and do the best that they can do every single day, each and every one of them. I mean, it's just amazing. If I didn't have the chief operating officer that I have, I would be back on Sundays with a pile of stuff on my desk that I had to wade through. If I didn't have the development director that I have, I'd be back posting social media on Saturday afternoon. All of those things. And the people, my Jennifer Lopez, who I introduced as the J-Lo with talent, she runs our court program. She's brilliant. And they all work incredibly hard. So this has been pure joy for me. I just truly have loved this. So it's a tie. But when my kids said, just recently I had a big birthday, and they said, what's your favorite chapter? And I said, well, my favorite chapter is you. But then it's a tie because I love this chapter of my life. And who gets lucky enough to run for the mayor of Bridgeport, lose, and then get a hold in life? Who gets that lucky? That would be me. So that's where I am. It's a tie. It's a tie. I still wear my bluefish cap. I still have my leather jacket. But I love this work. Really, really love this work.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I really enjoyed listening to that. So as we wind down to the end of our conversation, what are your final thoughts for our audience, Mary Jane? Just in general, right? You've done all these interesting things. You've had your favorites and whatnot. What's some inspiration you can sprinkle in today?
Oh, gosh. Do what you love. Do what you want. Life is short. Life really is short. And it always takes something incredibly painful, the death of a loved one or the loss of something big in your life, before you say, life is short. So I try to remember that. Soledad, John Baptiste's wife, I'm blanking on her last name, just was asked this question. She's facing leukemia for the third time in her life. She's had 2 bone marrow transplants. She has a very, very tough road in front of her. And she said that everyone said, live each day as though it's your last. And she said, I just wasn't comfortable with that. And so what I've chosen to do is live every day as though it's my first.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a sensational piece of advice.
I love that.
Live every day as though it's your first, and be thankful for that day. It's just, when I practice gratitude and breathe deeply, it's a great day. Not every day. We don't get great days every day, but almost every day is a good day. And as my brother said, when I don't have a good day, when I go to the dark side, I come back as soon as I can, because it's not fun over there.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I love that answer. We're going to go over to Laura now for our final question, and then we'll ask how folks can get in touch with you, Mary Jane.
And Mary Jane, I think you've touched on parts of this throughout the conversation today, and the last 2 questions in particular. But something that we love to hear from our guests is really getting an understanding. And it's, why is it you do the work that you do? You've woken up several days, you've had different roles, you've had different hats, different jackets, different important ventures that you've either led, run, or be a part of. But at the heart and soul of it, what is your why?
Well, apart from acting, which is, that you do for yourself, everything that I have gone into was because I loved the cause. After I became aware of what domestic violence was and how this work could fundamentally change women's lives and therefore their children's and families' lives, I said, okay, how do I do that? And it looks like I've zigged and zagged across my career, but really everything I have done, what gets me up in the morning is that when you can help someone find their next best place or their next opportunity, when you can be a part of their changing their life, your own life is a good life. And with the Bluefish, I was able to instill some financial security in the lives of 200 people. And here at Interval House, we are able to get someone, A, help keep them safe, and B, help them find their next chapter in life. It's incredibly gratifying. And I'm just fortunate, blessed, really, that I have the opportunity to do that each and every day. I once said to a donor who wrote a big check that covered most of the salary of one of our hotline workers, I said, you know, that hotline worker is not like you and me. She doesn't get to have a bad day. When the phone rings, she doesn't get to be sad. She doesn't get to be grumpy. She doesn't get to be inadequate. She doesn't get to be any of those things. She is on because it's somebody's life on the line. So I think about that every day, and it gets me, well, not right out of bed, but it does get me out of bed and up and ready to do this work again.
That's lovely. Mary Jane, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way? We'll put everything in the show notes.
The best way at the moment is to email me, and it's mj.foster@intervalhousect.org. mj.foster@intervalhousect.org. So I'm a little bit on the move over the next few weeks, or month. And so best way to reach me, because I've always got my phone, is an email.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And we thank you for spending time with us today as a very busy woman that you are. And I want to thank Laura. Laura, it's great to have you back. And Jackie, so appreciative that you said, yes.
My pleasure.
I want to be guest co-host with you. So thank you. To our listeners, we appreciate you. Please recommend the Prime Life podcast to your friends, your family, and give us feedback. Tell us what you love and what you don't love. And we'll be with you again next week on the Prime Life podcast. Thank you, everyone.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.